Let's keep the AFC East going, my man.
Stars are just filing in tonight.
That's right. Our next caller, who we're having on, talking a little Patriots. Let's see here. Yeah, we've got him on the line as well. We haven't talked to him since
Super Bowl week. Yeah.
So we're going to Patriots beat reporter for CLNS Media, host of the Pats All 22 podcast, our buddy, Mr. Evan Lazar. How you doing?
Yeah, representing the evil empire of the
Yeah, we just had Ryan Talbot on talking Bills, and he's like, oh, God, you got a Patriots guy coming on.
Evan, thanks for bringing us what most people thought was the most boring Super Bowl ever. I thought it was great, side note.
I think a lot of people in New England would disagree with the boring.
Right.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Evan, let's get right into it. We gotta ask. You got your feet down there in New England. What's the latest you're hearing with Robert Kraft?
Well, I think right now we're all kind of in the holding pattern until that court date that his lawyer needs to appear in a couple of weeks. He obviously will not be appearing himself, I don't think, at all in this case, unless it really goes to a court with a judge. It's not going to be a jury case. Obviously, with him being a public figure and being so popular here in Boston, it would be pretty difficult to have an impartial jury with the Robert Kraft case. But I think it's just going to be the judge. And from the sounds of it, though, and from all the reports and all the indications, that he's going to plead not guilty and try to fight this thing, which, to be honest with you, obviously it's a much different case scenario. But the Patriots have been known to kind of fight some of these, legal battles or league battles and
you don't say,
what happens on the field.
That's right.
Yeah, so it does kind of have a feeling, obviously very, very different circumstances, but it has that same feeling of, we're not going to admit guilt until we absolutely have to.
Hey, why not? Why not? Talking about another star there in New England, Gronk. Tell us, man, is he going to retire?
Well, it looks to me, and I think it sounds to me, that every day that goes by that he doesn't retire, it gets closer and closer to him coming back, I think, next season. And I think that the indications are right now that he is going to come back. That's not to say that anything is definitive right now, not reporting that it's 100% that he's coming back by any means. But I think that the fire is still there. I know he's been down at Gillette Stadium a whole lot in the off season. I think that a little bit of that is rehabbing some injuries from the past season. He had a pretty bad hip stinger in the Super Bowl that gave him some problems, and he also has a bulging disc in his back that is probably going to need surgery at some point in the off season. And those two things, obviously there's no better medical staff or medical attention that he could get than the guys down at Gillette Stadium. So that could be why he's been down there. But Tom Brady's talked about publicly him coming down to work out with him at TV12 and all that kind of stuff. So it sounds to me like there's a pretty good chance that Gronk comes back. We'll see what happens, though. I mean, I think we've seen in the past with a couple of different examples in recent history where guys come back for training camp and they start to get back into the grind of training camp practices and meetings and all that stuff, and they say, wait a second, I don't have this in me anymore to do this. So maybe you have that kind of situation, but right now I think we're leaning towards Gronk playing in 2019.
Do you think Gronk and Brady are going to kind of ride off into the sunset together?
Well, I think that it's a pretty underrated aspect of this is how persuasive Tom Brady can be.
Right, exactly.
Get Gronkowski to play again. Go ahead.
No, go on, yeah.
Yeah, so I just I think that that's one thing that is kind of been under talked about here is that Tom Brady comes to Rob Gronkowski. I'm sure they've already probably had this conversation and says, buddy, let's do this one last time. Let's try to go after another Super Bowl. That's a pretty persuasive guy to be arguing that point with you. So I think that and Bob Kraft has been known to be a very persuasive human being as well. So I think everybody in New England would love to see him back, and everybody in the organization would love to see him back. And maybe even if Gronk doesn't necessarily want to come back himself, does he have it in him to say no to everybody else?
Right.
Yeah, that's a great point. Jack Easterby, you got rid of a character coach. What the heck is a character coach?
So this one is really interesting because and I'm not trying to downplay the other fan bases, but in a fan base that is so hyper focused on everything about the team, I think it's pretty awesome actually that we care about a character coach leaving the team. Like, this is usually something that kind of flies under the radar that nobody really thinks about or cares about, but here in New England it's kind of been a pretty big storyline. And I think the main thing that Esterby did is he just was kind of somebody that, you know, a lot of these players could talk to, and he built a culture. A lot of building a culture in New England has been you know, in the last couple of years at least with Esterby, and he was a big part of keeping Josh Gordon on the field for as long as Gordon was on the field. And it just seems like a guy that everybody that you talk to, every player that you speak to, just speaks glowingly of the guy in terms of what he's been able to do. Now, what his exact job description is and title, I'm not 100% sure, but it sounds to me like he's almost like the Patriots guidance counselor in a lot of ways. And he's kind of just one of those guys that you can come into, you know, step into my office and let's have a conversation type of thing, and air out some things that might be bothering you. And he's really made a big imprint and given a really great impression. Now, I think that some of the rumors are out there that he might be following Brian Flores to Miami. I know last year when Josh McDaniels was supposed to be going to Indy, there was some rumors out there that Esterby might follow him to Indianapolis. So maybe that's what we're, you know, kind of waiting for here is the next shoe to drop with Esterby.
We're talking with Evan Lazar. Go follow him on Twitter at EZLazar, Lazar, Patriots beat reporter for CLNS Media. Let's get into 2019, heading into the season. I mean, Edelman, he's put in a lot of work. You looked at him in the playoffs and the Super Bowl. Is it time to kind of get him an outside compliment for Julian Edelman?
Well, I think that's really been the biggest thing, and what they tried to do with Josh Gordon, and it worked, you know, obviously for the amount of time that Gordon was on the field, was find a guy on the perimeter. And it's not so much that the Patriots want a guy that's going to take the top off the defense. I think that's talked about a lot around football and around this team is let's find that deep threat that can, you know, threaten the safeties and take the top off. They tried that with Brandon Cooks, and Brandon Cooks had a great season for them. He had over 1,000 yards, big part of that playoff run in the AFC Championship game especially. But it always kind of seemed like an odd fit with an older quarterback that wasn't necessarily known for having a huge arm to pair him, you know, with a guy that needed the ball 50, 60 yards downfield at times to be productive. So I think they would really like to find that intermediate perimeter threat that really Josh Gordon was doing a nice job holding that spot down for them. But obviously they need a guy that's a little bit more reliable.
Yeah, fair enough. You mentioned Gronk earlier with all of those kind of nagging injuries. He's had the bug the entire career. Do you think it's time to look for a replacement either in free agency or in the NFL draft for Gronk for, you know, looking over the long term?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this draft, and I'm sure you've talked about it with a lot of people, is just absolutely loaded at the tight end position. And you have those big three, I call them, at the top of the draft, and Irv Smith and Hawkinson and Noah Fant from Iowa. I don't know if the Patriots go round one unless one of those Iowa guys falls to them. But I think Irv Smith in round two, they have the 56th overall pick from Chicago that they could probably package with one of their 10 picks in the later part of the draft. They have 12 of them total. So you know Bill Belichick is going to be wheeling and dealing all draft weekend with that amount of draft capital. So maybe they sneak back up into the beginning of the second round and grab Irv Smith out of Alabama. But even if they don't, Jay Sternberger, I think out of A&M is a really good fit for them. The guy that can really run the slot, very good after the catch. That's like kind of what the Patriots look for in their receivers, the guy that can stretch the seam and work the middle of the field is a nice fit for him. And then obviously there's some guys later on, Caden Smith from Stanford, Kalali Waring, the water polo player that everybody's been talking about since the combine.
Right.
I really like him. He's extremely raw. Obviously, he's only played 19 games of collegiate football, but just in terms of his movement skills, at 6'6", 250 pounds, he moves just as good as anybody in this draft. So there's a lot of really good tight end prospects, and I think that the Patriots would like to take at least one in this draft.
So you on Twitter, he's a great follow. Go give him a follow at EZLazard. You recently gave a plan for the Patriots in rounds 1 and 2. So 32nd in round 1. You got 2 picks in round 2.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that plan.
So basically, I think that, just learning and studying Bill Belichick's draft habits over the last 2 decades, it becomes clearer and clearer to you that he really does take the best player available when the Patriots are on the clock. And when he doesn't feel like that best player available at the time that they're drafting is a good fit or a guy that is really going to, move the needle for them, that's when you see the trade downs. And that's, the vintage Belichick trade down is when that happens, when they really like a guy that's maybe worthy of the pick 10 spots later. That's when they tend to trade down. But in this draft, I think they really, especially if Trey Flowers leaves in free agency, they have to bolster that defensive line and add a defensive lineman in this draft that is just absolutely stacked with D linemen. I mean, we're talking about probably going 15, 20 deep. I know Daniel Jeremiah said on the Combine broadcast that they could probably put together an entire first round mock draft of all defensive linemen in this draft, and it really does kind of feel like that. So at 32, I kind of have them penciled in right now before free agency. We'll see what happens with Trey Flowers, and they also have Malcolm Brown, their interior defensive lineman, who's also a free agent. Right now, I think that at 32, you got to take the best available defensive lineman. And then later on in the draft, they have those 2 picks in the second round at 56 and obviously the one at the end at 64. And they have a bunch of picks in rounds 2, 3, and 4 from accumulating compensatory picks from losing Nate Solder, Dion Lewis, Malcolm Butler, all last year in free agency. So they have 12 picks total. New England does 6 in the top 101. So really, though, that's great draft capital. But my whole thing is that, and what I think, just studying Belichick, is that draft capital is great, but getting players is what matters in this league, right? You got to turn it into somebody. And I would just assume that you'd probably feel a little bit better about turning that into a player that they really know is going to make an impact other than, just taking picks just because they have 12 of them.
Fair enough. Evan, where can the listeners listen to your podcast?
Yeah, we're on iTunes. We're on Google Play Store. We're on Spotify, all over the place. It's the Patriots All 22 podcast right now. We're in the middle of doing all draft stuff, previewing the draft position by position. We're going to do actually a little bit later tonight. We're doing a combine recap type show as well. So we're really going to hit all of that hard. And then, of course, if the Patriots make some big signings, and we'll go over some free agent stuff too next week.
All right, back to the Super Bowl.
I hope so, right? I mean, I think it's pretty crazy to be talking about this, still. But as long as they keep on, keep Brady upright like they did in the playoffs last year, they're going to have as good of a chance as anybody.
Love it. Thanks for joining the podcast, my man. We'll talk to you soon. Appreciate your time.
Happy to do it, guys.
All right, that was Evan Lazard.
Love Alan. Evan.
You just call him Alan? Come on, man.
Poor guy. He's going to be like, oh, I'm never going to talk to him yet. But that guy's great.
He's fantastic.
He is so on top of the draft right now. I mean, just uploading video clips, giving analysis. That guy's a great follow on Twitter. Check him out.
Go give him a follow.
You know what else is great, Dave?
What's that?
Hell no, hell yeah.
Well, it's time